All right.
All right.
Welcome.
Wait.
I was gonna do it. No, I'm just gonna do it, but you
No,
start.
go for it. No.
No, we
Patrick,
all
do it at the
went
same
to
time.
mic. No,
Okay, let's all do it at the same time. We'll all
two.
figure out what we're going to say. Welcome
Welcome
to the
to the
Janchi
Janchi
Show.
That was so slow.
I'm
Your host,
Patrick.
Oh, wait, we're not all gonna say our individual names? Oh, you're gonna now. That's pretty good.
Ah, dang it. All right.
No,
Anyways.
you lost it.
I lost
You were doing well, but you lost it.
You're listening to the Janchi Show, hosted by 3 Korean American adoptees diving headfirst into what it means to be adopted, Korean American, and more. And now, here's your hosts, Nathan, Patrick, and KJ.
Welcome back to the Janchi Show. This is another episode of your favorite podcast about Korean adoptees and adoption.
Okay.
Oh, I'm going to go there. Yeah, we're going there. It's your favorite.
We're okay.
But we are back. I am one of your hosts, Nathan Nowak, along with awesome co-hosts KJ and Patrick. Why is that
Patrick,
funny?
the dictator of the podcast.
Was it because I hesitated when I said that?
Yeah, I didn't know what you're gonna add after awesome. But I mean, it worked. It was fun.
Awesomely awesome. How about that?
Perfect.
How you guys doing?
Perfectly acceptable.
Perfectly perfect.
Acceptable. Perfectly perfect.
Well, I don't know about all that.
Well,
Perfectly
But-
perfect.
we are the Janchi Show. We are, if you haven't ever listened to our show, welcome. We will tell you briefly, Patrick, what does Janchi mean?
So Janchi, as we use it to define the show's title, the Janchi Show. I don't know why I just said all that. But Janchi means to celebrate together, usually over food. Traditionally, it is a coming together to just be in community and kind of catch up and share with your family and your friends, which is what we do on the podcast. We come together to celebrate all of our different identities, all of our shared heritages, and we usually do that with a food or drink or snack item, and also sometimes a guest.
And we've had a lot of really good guests, a lot of really good food and drinks, and yeah, we're not stopping yet. We got lots more to explore and a lot more people to talk to. So, but sometimes we don't talk to anybody. Sometimes we just do a little solo show and we just talk amongst ourselves.
Yeah. Speaking of not talking to anybody and talking amongst ourselves, we have a live show coming up at the end of the month. Super excited over in LA. Doing our best to make things safe and fun and exciting. And we
Outdoors.
we're really looking forward to it. So if you want to come to that, go to janchishow.com/live and you can come and get a ticket or support the show or, whatever. Find out all the details at that. janchishow.com/live.
Or you can say this isn't for me and hit the back button and just don't even fill it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a lot
Or
of
you
people
can-
coming. I mean, we have more than 10, but less than 50.
I just told people not to come for the show for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks,
Well,
Patrick.
Yeah. It's reverse marketing. I get it. Okay.
Yeah, reverse psychic marketing.
Classic. Okay.
It's like when you have a really long line outside of a club, people are like, ooh, I want to go there, but I really don't want to stand in line.
That's funny.
And then you go talk to people and you're like, oh, what are you in line for? And you're like, nothing. I just love being in lines.
So maybe
Yeah.
we should just let all the people stand in a line
That's a
when
good
they come out for the event.
A person that just goes and stands in long lines and then just is there to
I
be
just
in
love
line.
queuing.
I just love queuing and talking to people.
This is going to be amazing.
What's your deal?
Pretty sure that's a story beat in the Gilmore Girls, A Year in the Life. I'm like 80% positive that that's true. That
Gonna
Rory
need
has
you to look that
I
up.
don't know. Somebody tweeted me and fact check me. Yeah. So today we're
worry.
doing something a little bit different with our solo show because the Olympics are on, and we wanted to take a minute and talk about what it means to. I think especially for me, what it means to watch the Olympics, be a part of this global moment as third culture kids, as people who are Korean and American and exist in kind of that third space. Especially, I think, with it being in Tokyo. I don't know. For me, obviously, it's just like a stone's throw away from our home peninsula. And so there's a lot of cultural analogs to Korea and Yeah. So just curious, have you guys been watching the Olympics? What's been your experience with the current Olympics or Olympics previously?
I love the Olympics. I'm very happy that they are still holding it this year and they're doing it safely, as safe as they can. And I've been really enjoying watching all the news about it, and just the fact that Japan being so I know it's such a great country in the way that they do things. They're very systematic. They're very detailed, and just little things like people joked about it at the beginning. It's like, we're sleeping on cardboard, but it was because they were made of cardboard beds that were better for the economy and not wasteful. And I even saw the report that the metals were made from recycled laptops and phones, the metals and that. So I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I just really enjoy watching the competitions and the I guess what would you call it, the nationality patriotism. I don't know what am I saying here. The
National pride.
National pride. Yes, thank you. The support of your own country, and for us, I think we're kind of rooting for two countries, right? I don't know. Do you guys root for South Korea when you watch the Olympics?
Well, my whole thing coming out of all of that you said was, how do they recycle phones into the metals that they're using and handing out? I think that's pretty interesting. But we don't have to talk about that.
You can go read about it. I could just be reading the headline of a thing, but I was reading about the values of metals and how much they actually are worth. And they're not like, the gold is not a full solid brick gold. It's
Dude, that would be ridiculous.
Part of it's phone.
Part of it's phone, but a lot of it's silver.
Part of it is silicon.
I guess silver, and it's gold plated, but they're still worth something.
I do feel like I saw an article that said the Olympic Committee is telling the athletes that you can't eat the medals because everybody puts it when people put it in their mouth, which people obviously I don't think that you can eat them. And this maybe have been an Onion headline, maybe. Now that I'm thinking about it, is that an Onion thing?
That's true.
I could have swore I saw it on CNN or something, but it very much well could have been an Onion.
To be fair, these medals do kind of look like a wrapped chocolate, like a York peppermint patty really kind of thing. So
I think the medal came first, though. I think the chocolate was emulating the medal in that way. Anyways, to Nathan, to answer your actual question,
which came first, the chocolate or the medal?
To answer your actual question, I've always I don't know. I think I was hyper patriotic back in the day and would always root for America. And then I think there was one year where South Korea women's soccer was really good, I think. And I don't know if they won in the Olympics but I think they were playing really well. I remember that being the year that I rooted for both and then would kind of start doing that. And I think I have kind of the same now. I'm more rooting for the individual athletes versus necessarily rooting for the U.S. or for Korea. And I think that honestly kind of speaks to that in-betweenness of being an adoptee for me specifically. And just, I don't know, just thinking about it in that way. I hadn't really thought about it before, but yeah, kind of rooting for the individuals involved.
I messaged one of my friends who is Japanese and her parents are immigrants. And I was like, is your family very into the Olympics or are they whatever about it? Like, do you feel anything special about it being in Tokyo? Do you care more if you don't, because we weren't friends by the time the last Summer Olympics were around. And so I didn't even know her. So I have no idea where she stood on the Olympics, but just curious on her take, especially because I know that she's wrestled with some of the same things that we have about we're for her, she's like a generation removed, but whatever. We're removed from kind of our ethnic roots. And so being raised in America, but having ethnic roots, being a part of the Asian diaspora, and thinking about so how do you go about navigating kind of this thing is interesting. So just curious to see her take. And she was like, yeah, I don't know whether I should root for Japan or for America. And I was like, oh, you should just root for Japan in English and root for America in Japanese.
There you go. But I think that's something that you see that playing out in the headlines of Naomi Osaka going and playing for Japan. And people are like, well, you lived in America your whole life. Why would you do that? And it's like, well, she's still Japanese. Just because she was raised in America doesn't immediately remove your ethnic heritage. And that's, again, something that just I felt was very parallel And I guess maybe because I've been watching a lot of like Naomi Osaka stuff lately, but just really thinking about how outside forces can easily conspire to like remove you or pieces of you just because it suits what they want it to suit. And it's like when I don't know, it's weird to see it. I guess it's not weird, but really it's weird to be cognizant and aware of that in my own self and then see it play out in these like huge name athletes on a global stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think the same thing and opposite, with Suni Lee and Yul Moldauer. Like here are two Asian American gymnasts. One is Hmong American, the other is a CAD like us, and so just thinking about those blended identities. And even like now that my Instagram has become very Asian adoptee centric in my feed and stuff, and thinking about that, like how much pride there is and like extra pride I feel now when an Asian American achieves greatness, versus like I don't know, like Caleb Dressel or Katie Ledecky in swimming, and you're just like, I mean, that's cool, hooray, But then, yeah, there is just kind of this extra nuance of, I guess, kind of that fourth. I don't know if you can call it a fourth culture, but like that subculture of Asian America, right? And so I think it's just it is an interesting kind of way for me to navigate how I think about the Olympics. Like on the one hand, I watch it because I have live TV, which I've not had before.
Lucky.
I mean, it's bundled into the rent, so I had it whether or not I had a choice or not. But like, so like I watch it, but then also I somehow care less about it. Like I feel like this whole year for me, I feel less patriotic because I've been given a more critical worldview to think about America just in the past 18 months. And certainly the way that I am moving through being an American and thinking through, I think as much as Asian Americans are thinking about what it means to be American, like we're all kind of thinking about what does it mean to be American. And so I don't know. I just think that sports events kind of draw out a unique level of that question.
Very true.
Yeah, I think the other thing too for me is, especially over this last year, being on this journey of like understanding my identities and really understanding how narrative plays into a lot of the ways that public opinion is shaped. I know I posted about this last week, but I've been seeing more because there's like, I think I've counted 4 American adoptees who are in the Olympics and at least 1 in Canada. And I think there are even more who are competing this year. And I think that's awesome. And obviously, like we said, or as I said, rooting for the individual as opposed to necessarily more nationalistic rooting. I think with everything that I've been thinking about in terms of how we talk about adoptee experiences, really worrying about how the adoptee experience is going to be talked about post these Olympics. I think we're already seeing that in certain articles about Margaret McNeil and Jordan Wendell, where it's very much the playing into the savior narrative and really the super positive aspects of adoption that, I don't know, I think that we've been, or at least I have been trying to push back against a little and just shining a light on the other stories, and like something that we do on the show is like we tell stories from all across the spectrum. And so really, it worries me because it's fuel for the fires of the things that continue to perpetuate the positivity. And I'm not saying that you can't be positive, but it's easy to point here and say, this is the right way because these are Olympians and look at where they've made it. And it seems more detrimental when you try and say, well, my experience hasn't been like that. And you get put down for being, angry or ungrateful or whatever. And so I think that that's something else I've been looking at in terms of the Olympics this year in particular, is just what are those narratives that spin out of the stories of the individuals that are competing, specifically for the adoptees.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, especially with the Toyota commercial with Jessica Long, the Paralympian.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And so like seeing that every other commercial break just makes me like, this is annoying. And I mean, it's a good story for her. It's certainly not everybody's story. And also like Jessica doesn't even say anything. You know what I mean? So I shouldn't say Miss Long doesn't even say it. Not like we're on a first name basis, but yeah. So I think that does add some just like I don't even know, like, if I'm being honest, I don't even know what I think or what I believe. And it still makes me bristle, I guess. Just, I wish that it was, I wish that it was different. I wish that the narrative was different. And I don't know that the Olympics are a place at all to talk about adoption, you know?
Right. Like, why is that even exactly? Why is that something that's pushed through and saying, hey, because I know you got to like talk about your backstory and your origin or whatever. And I realize that at the end of the day, that's going to play into it. That's always going to be talked about. But it's not like if this person wasn't saved from here, like this is impossible. They never could have been this. You know, it's like it takes away from the individual's agency as like an athlete, as like this is what you work for to do and accomplish. But it also puts down all the other people who do get adopted who don't have the positive experience. You know, and that's the side of the story that we're not hearing, that we never hear. So that's just where my worry lies in that.
I'm curious if some of the media does it. I mean, you know, everyone likes to relate to a story, you know, or a person, especially a professional athlete. So when they hear stories about, oh, this person is Hmong or this person is an adoptee, it just makes it so that other people can connect more with those people. And I know that they're hopefully not doing it for malicious reasons and, you know, just trying to up their ratings, but they're doing it to include everybody, to get everyone on board with, like, you know, supporting these people. For example, you know, Yule is actually from Colorado. And so I see a lot of my news stories on my feed pop up saying, oh, you know, he's from Arvada, or, you know, he was in Fort Collins and Wheat Ridge. I don't know. Like, I don't even know where he specifically originated from. It looks like he's moved around a lot, but Coloradoans are supporting him because he's from Colorado. You know, the Hmong community supports Suni Lee because, you know, she talks about it, and there, something I read about that was an interesting story, was that because the Hmong people are not from a specific country, they're from multiple countries or region. They said that they were happy to relate to that being Hmong versus relating to a country, because they don't have a country specific. So that's kind of an interesting, you know. And then, of course, more recently too, the one that I read about the Philippines winning their first medal in 100 years for weightlifting. That, you know, Miss Diaz that's a pretty amazing feat. And so I have a bunch of Filipino friends, and my Facebook was just lit up with support for her. And I think that's really cool. I really enjoy seeing that. So,
yeah.
And back to answer my own question earlier too, by the way, since you guys didn't ask me my question, if I'm rooting for America or, you know, USA or South Korea. When I used to play video games, you know, the Olympic video games or sports games, sometimes I would select South Korea as my video game flag or origin. You know, sometimes I'd select the USA as that option, but yeah, they're doing fairly well. I do like to support both countries on that, even though the US usually brings in a lot more medals. But again, it's like you said, it's not really about that. I don't look at it as a total quantity of medals. I look at it the individual athletes and what they're doing. So that's been cool.
I definitely do the same thing with video games. Like if I build a character in FIFA to go play sports ball, either he's Korean, like especially if it's a coach, right? Like he's Korean, but I have him coach like the U.S. national team or whatever, or he's American and he goes to like coach the South Korean national team, you know, or like I use my Korean name, which actually, side note, it is really wonderful to be able to hear my own surname called when my character is played.
That's pretty cool.
That's a fun, like, cool. Oh yeah, you know, whatever. So
cool. Then for the Olympics this year, how were you when the U.S. played Korea for the soccer?
I didn't watch it.
Was that a group
I haven't
game?
been able to watch like any of the. I don't think so. I don't think they were in the same group.
I thought it was. Yeah, I didn't think so either. Was that exhibition maybe?
Yeah,
What?
I don't know, but I haven't been able to watch, and I think this is actually the bummer of how.
Oh, sorry, baseball. My fault.
Oh, gotcha. I don't watch baseball. But I think that's the bummer of like how the Olympics are being broadcast this year is it is so just like America centric, and you
Yeah.
like don't get to watch a lot of things live, and so then your coverage, like primetime coverage, is super edited, and you know it's just the whole thing. So it takes away from the fun of it because it's just like deeply American. And I'm like, I mean, that's fine, but also I want to see how, like, I can't. It's much harder for me to keep up with how Korea is doing because they're just like, well, here we've chopped and changed and made everything deeply American. So, you know, it is what it is. But I think it's hard to. No, I know. Like that's just a byproduct of living in a country that we live
nothing
in,
more
but,
American than making it about ourselves.
yeah. So yeah, it's just interesting, and not to drag the Olympics, but I just wonder some of the things that I've been reading. You know, I think there's the double whammy for me in the Toyota commercial of the adoptee, the fact that she's also a Paralympiad, right? That she's disabled. And thinking about, you know, like Ibram Kendi writes about like the exceptional black body, you know, and I think we talk about, or I've seen talked about in adoptee spaces or disabled spaces, like the exceptionalism and how that can be really harmful. And so like the Olympics are kind of like based in exceptionalism. So like you kind of only see exceptional people. And I get that those stories are really inspiring, but like the double whammy for me of being adopted and disabled and then seeing my voice being doubly just negated is interesting. And I think that's another reason, like I'm still wrestling with what that exceptionalism means and how that like pushes me to I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I definitely get where you're coming from. I think that I don't know what the right way is, but I think there's an appropriate way to lift up exceptionalism, and especially in terms of like athletics. And then there's a whole other realm of like using it to exploit either that individual or a group of people for gain. And I think, I don't know how popular this is going to be, but I think something I've always kind of thought over this past year, or thought I've developed, is that like the Asian adoptee is kind of the model within the model minority. And I really think about that when I think of how adoptee stories are presented specifically, because it's like it's saying that the adoptee is exceptional, one, for being adopted, two, they're also an Asian adoptee. So you have all of the stereotypes that come with Asians of being very submissive and really assimilative and things like that. And then all of that is now pitted up against you and is used to prop up what you have done that's exceptional in the athletic world, you know, in athletic achievement. And I think that's where I struggle and wrestle with it. And not so much that I think the struggle for me is like how can I invest my time in this when I know like what my dollar, my watching, my viewership, like that value just feeds back into this whenever I engage with that commercial or engage with an ad that pops up on my when I'm browsing on the internet and stuff like that. And so I think I wrestle with it because it's like I see it, but how, like, what do we do to combat that besides what we've already been doing? And I think obviously talking about it is one of those ways, but I mean, I definitely get where you're coming from. Like struggling with trying to just, I don't know, is it rationalizing? Is it justifying like that type of exceptionalism? Or is it more just like, how do I balance the two or manage the two, or the ways that I feel about the two? Maybe I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think certainly within disabled athletics portrayed in able-bodied media, you know, it's always like, oh, well, look at this person who doesn't have legs and how they just run and they overcome, you know, whatever it is. And I think like being an Olympian is freaking hard. Whether that's being an able-bodied Olympian or a Paralympian, you know, like that's a tough journey. And I think if you just normalize, like, yeah, this person doesn't have legs, but also look at how much work they put in to get to the elite level that they're in. Like that story in and of itself is exceptional without it being about, oh, but they don't even have legs, or,
exactly.
You know, and I think that, I don't know, like even thinking about like my own musical journey, as I was like learning how to play music and do those things, I think a lot of people in my life are like, oh man, you know, when I first saw your hand, I was like, you know, it's probably like, you can play guitar, but then you started playing, and then it was just like I couldn't even. And then with your hand too, and I'm like, no, you didn't have to add that last bit. You could have
Right.
just stopped it. You think that I'm a good guitar player, and that would have been fine,
Yeah.
But like adding that last bit, it's just like people already say, like they, oh, I wish I could play guitar. And then like, and I can't even imagine, like, you don't need to. It's hard for everyone. Like it's the same amount of work. Like my work is no different than your work. I can't imagine learning to play guitar with 10 fingers. So, but you don't see me making you exceptional and whatever. So I think it is interesting. And so I think the part of me that bristles then about the adoption is that implied, like, well, she would have had a terrible life if it
Right.
weren't for adoption.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Right.
you don't know. I mean, maybe she would have, but also maybe she wouldn't have, know, and who knows? Yeah. And it does just kind of make the parents are like, you could save a child. I'm like, I mean,
Exactly.
yes. And it is possible for the child to, like there are plenty of, stories that we hear where that adoption doesn't go well. There are plenty of stories where people don't get adopted and they're okay. And, like just that range, is so important. So
additional story that's been coming out a lot in the news that I've read was, of course, Simone Biles and her exit from the few of the competitions and stuff. And I really appreciated that they focused on the mental health aspect of it because I think a lot of people don't talk about that, and they don't. I mean, especially in professional athletes. I mean, like you said, it is hard to be a professional, Olympian. I wouldn't call it a professional, I guess. Just to be an Olympian, right? Just to be,
yeah,
so good at any sport, and then to think about the pressures and stuff that you have to live up to. Yeah, mental health is going to be very important, and that they talked about it. I feel more this time than I've seen in the past. What have you guys been reading about that?
Well, I mean, I think, I think being an elite level or professional level athlete is definitely one thing that comes with the pressures. Simone Biles is walking around at age 24 with the greatest of all time title and one of the greatest Olympian gymnasts that has literally walked the planet at 24. And then she's like, I need to take a break and we're going to sit here and rail against her for doing that. Like that completely blows my mind. Like I almost can't even wrap my head around it. The same thing with Naomi Osaka. Like you cheer someone on to get to the top. And then as soon as you see them break under the pressure, even once, like it's immediately you call the dogs. And I just don't understand it, especially for fathers of daughters. How could you sit there and like criticize someone, a young girl, for being like, the pressure of the world stage is too much? And not only that, for Simone Biles, she's going through the Larry Nassar shit, that she's going through injuries, trying to do that, and then trying to come back to the Olympics 4 years later and compete at the same level. I mean, I freaking have mental breakdowns just walking through my house sometimes, and I don't have cameras or people constantly digesting that. And she is not only that, she's Black, so she's got to deal with all of the extra oppression, all of the extra attention being on that specific quality for no other reason than people hate it. And I hate to say that, but that's just the world that we live in. And for me, I mean, it's just, honestly, it's made me super furious, because it honestly reminds me when Jeremy Lin broke into the NBA with the Knicks. I'll never forget. I think it was the first game that he played bad. And I just happened to be on ESPN, and the article title that came out said "A Chink in the Armor?" ? Mm-hmm. And it was up there for about 5 minutes, and they took it down. And I just remember thinking, and this was before I even started thinking about myself as Asian, like, what the heck? Like, what is this? And that's Jeremy Lin just like coming up out of nowhere, out of Harvard, playing his way into the NBA, then dominating. And he did it for, in that time period, very short stretch of time. And he's already having all of this attention and pressure. I mean, playing in New York, obviously, but I just remember thinking that when I saw all these attacks start coming in on Simone, I was just like, that's ridiculous. It's like, these are young people who are being attacked now, most likely by people 35 years and older, who I'm not even going to speak on why they're doing that. But I mean, it's just like, what are you doing? Like, what are you really complaining about? And that's my thing. Sorry I got so hot. But
No, that's fine. Just to add to your hotness, or to simmer
Turn up the
down,
spice.
to simmer down your hotness. It was.
Oh, JK.
I started to talk about it, but I was referring to the positive things that people have come out
my
about
bad.
it.
Yeah,
and say
you did say positive.
no, but
stuff.
you did.
No, I think
I'm
that's
glad
right.
that you.
Yeah.
That I'm glad that you got hot about it, because that is the case. There was a lot of people that were criticizing it, and then there was a lot of people supporting her and really giving her a lot of encouragement and saying, yes, take your time. And they were bashing the people and calling the people out for being, the way they were, and just saying, hey, step back. So that I really appreciated, that people were actually accepting the mental health aspect of it and saying, you guys need to like back off. And like you're saying, I mean, you were getting all hot about it, and that I think a lot of people did. And so I think that's great. And there's other cases. I mean, I think there's a lot of situations in the Olympics this time that I feel have become a news story, posts about racism and calling it out. Reporters, making comments about not just Asians, but about other countries, and making some comments on air about stuff that should not be on air. I don't know if you also heard about the archery one. There was one about the font that was used. It was like a Chinese takeout box font that they used for her name. And like right there, I mean, people called that one out. So the fact that it's becoming more aware that, hey, you guys need to stop being so racist.
Be better humans.
Be better humans. Exactly. I think is amazing that this year, I feel there's been a lot more of that than there has been in the past.
Yeah. Well, and to Goldilocks it, I think like it is really great that from the top, I think a lot of the language has been very supportive of Simone Biles. And I am super angry about how people just like don't even think about the pressures. Like if I see a young person, not that I'm like so far removed from this, but if I hear somebody going through a quarter life crisis, basically anyone in their 20s, and they're like, I don't know what to do with my life, like that's hard enough, because like it is just being alive is hard. And the fact that, Simone Biles is not even 25, and she has the GOAT tag, and she has, hopefully 3/4 of her life yet to live. And then on top of that, the pandemic. And like, we see this all the time in soccer, right? That when stadiums are empty, there are some players who just don't perform well when there isn't a crowd. And like, you think about like whenever they cut to Suni Lee's family and like her whole community, like jam packed into a living room, and they're like texting everybody like that is like, it takes a whole village, right? There's a whole support system. So like, I think that Simone Biles, being the competitor that she is, maybe she just needs that whole atmosphere, and losing that has like kind of offset her mentally, that like to just say that like, oh yeah, like the first world is coming out of the pandemic, or whatever, the developed, I don't know what the better way of saying that is anymore, but well developed modern nations, whatever, is coming out of the pandemic, while other nations who are competing, like their countries are still being ravaged by the pandemic. Like that's so much added pressure on top of it being quiet in stadiums, on top of it. And so, like I'm sure that that's helpful for some athletes and really detrimental to other athletes. So it's a whole situation. And I think it is just important to remember that athletes are human beings. And I think especially when you put into like the chances of you, like so many of them are younger than we are, or I mean, like the Russian Olympic Committee gymnasts who are like 16, 17, 18, like can't even believe that they are performing like they are, and just having grace and compassion for like, what they're going through is hard. And then also it's still a pandemic, and also like their environment is so different, and so that's tough. But it's interesting going through the Olympics this year. And I think being on the journeys that we've been on, is I just have such a different interaction. And I guess really, my hope in having this episode be the way it is, obviously it's a break in form, but, one of the things that we want this show to be is a place to find language. And, I needed to have a moment to try to sort out what I was feeling. And I'm not really an external processor, but I needed you guys to help me think through, like, I have these feelings and I don't have the language for it, but I'm experiencing this thing with the Olympics, and I know that I can't be alone. Like we see, like we have found, there is so much power in community, and so having other voices of people who are on similar journeys, like, I don't know of, I mean, I haven't really paid attention. I'm sure that there are some people, but like generally what I've seen from other Olympiads supporting Simone Biles is like, totally understand, do what you need to do, be safe, right? That like the people who deeply get her journey are 100% behind her,
Yeah.
And so for us, I think like, even as viewers, it still is a moment. Obviously, mental health is a huge concern in the CAD community. I shouldn't say obviously. Mental health is a huge concern in the CAD community and in so many other communities. So just thinking about that and being able to process that, I think, is important. And the Olympics are really fun. I've loved seeing surfing and skateboarding. I think that's been really fantastic additions. But I think that it allows us to have a critical moment in our, how we think about the culture, how we think about how we want to navigate and push for change in this land that we live in, and this land that we have a complicated, unique relationship with. And then also how we celebrate, South Korea, if we celebrate South Korea, or like for me, generally I root for like USA, then Korea, then England. Those are like kind of my fallbacks, just because England is another English speaking country. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's just like, it is what it is. So maybe Canada is there at some point. So yeah, thanks for talking with me about this. If you have any further thoughts on this, I'd love to hear it.
Yes, I have one serious question. Favorite sport in the Olympics? What is it?
I mean, I love gymnastics. I love beach volleyball. I'm gonna say those are my top two.
I like swimming. I like baseball, but not Olympic baseball. I like basketball. I think the Olympics and basketball is very
It's his
interesting.
favorite sport.
But yeah, I'll say swimming. Swimming is fun. I'm not a good swimmer, but I do like watching the swimming in the Olympics. You?
I enjoy the obscure sports.
He likes table tennis.
Yeah,
Obviously.
table tennis, obvious. That's of course, that's always fun to watch. We've been watching the speed climbing, and
that's cool.
And some of just the synchronized diving. Just some of the ones that you're normally not watching, and there's a few more. Taekwondo, because my son is in Taekwondo, which really, when you watch it at a competitive level, it is just foot fencing. But but it's very interesting to see some of these competitions. I mean, they're so amazing, and I mean the speed climbing. If you haven't watched that, go watch a clip. It looks like they're flying. Like, I really do not know how they get up that wall so quick. But yeah, it's been really cool. The synchronized diving is just kind of funny, because you're like, how do they do that? Like, how do they jump at exactly the same time and rotate at exactly the same speed and have zero splash at the bottom?
I will say I was watching fencing the other day, and it was very entertaining. Had no idea what was going on. Every moment I felt like I understood what was happening. It was like something happened. I was like, nope, that's not what they were doing there.
Dude, I took fencing in college, and it is hard.
I believe it.
Even at a very basic amateur level with that foil, particularly foils, because they're so flimsy. I'm just like, this. How do you even do anything?
I know. How are they tapping? Like, you have to make contact to make the points, right? But
but sometimes it looks like they hit them and they're not. Like, how do they? Because the person is like hitting the thing and saying it, right? Yep. There's not, because I thought it was sensors at first, but it's not sensors. That's just super weird. It was cool. Cool,
it's very
no
neat.
doubt.
That's why I say I like watching the obscure
parts of the body
ones
that are in bounds. Like, you can't, like, not every part of the body is in bounds. And
right.
That's what I learned in my fencing class. Yeah, it's wild.
See, the commentators, terrible. I'll say this: Olympic Committee, your fencing commentators did not share anything about what was going on. So get that short up.
Well, yeah, this has been fun. No, I'm curious, because I really do enjoy watching it, and I've been playing a little bit.
I do too. I think that they're fun, and as much as we've just dragged the Olympics, they're still really fun to watch. So.
Right.
It's fun to watch sport and people that are good at their sport. All right,
exactly.
Well, this has been the Olympic Chat with the Janchi Boys. I hope that you enjoyed it. Like I said, we're thinking about what we can change to, shift to as we move into year 2 of the Janchi Show. Literally cannot believe we're almost 1 year old. So please, if you can, if you're able, we would love to have you come and celebrate with us our 1 year birthday. Help us throw a proper doljanchi for the Janchi Show, which is out in LA. You can check out all the deals for that at janchishow.com/live. If you want to get in
August
touch with us.
29th.
Oh yeah, right. I should probably say that's when it's happening. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Nathan, I appreciate that you always have my back, man.
I got the details. It's okay. You come with the fire, and I'll just throw in a few details.
And I'll just sprinkle in some water.
Yeah.
And I'll be mad. Oh wait, is that the fire? Is that the fire?
Happy staying mad. You know what I'm saying?
Hey.
Anyways, so yeah, August 29th will be out in LA. We'd love to see you out there, or whatever. Just send us some birthday wishes. JanchiShow.com/live. If you want to get in touch with us, you can follow us on social media. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to say this. Thank you for following us on social media at Janchi Show on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. Thank you for sending us an email at janchishow@justLikeMedia.com. We love being able to read those emails and hearing from people. Thank you for leaving us a review and a rating on Apple Podcasts. That means a lot to us and helps other people find the show. And thank you so much for telling a friend about our show. And even if you had to lie to them to say like, hey, this is, whatever, whatever gets them there. I appreciate it. Yeah. So thank you for really just for spreading the word and supporting us. It absolutely means the world to us. And I don't know. I mean, like, I hope that we would go forever. And the fact that we're coming up on year 1, the close of year 1 really means a lot to me. So seriously, thank you. You can find us individually at our social handles, which I will give out right now for myself. I am at KJ Relke on all of the social platforms.
And Nowak.
At and Nowak.
And Nowak at all places. No, I don't know. And Nowak on Instagram. I'm Nathan Nowak on Facebook.
And I'm at Patrick in the World on Instagram is where you can find me.
Yeah. That is it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week. Until then, Janchi Heyo. Nice.